I so submit. Thank you, President. I now propose the question to you that the aforesaid bill be read the second time. In accordance with the rules of procedure, the second reading debate is adjourned and the bill is referred to the House Committee.
This Council resumes the second reading debate on the Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024. Mr. Chen Xiuhong, Chairman of the Bills Committee on the bill, will first address the Council on the committee's report. Mr. Chen Xiuhong. Madam Deputy, as the Chairman of the Bills Committee on the Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024, I will report on the highlights of the BC's deliberations. The bill seeks to amend the Ozone Layer Protection Ordinance Cap 403 and its subsidiary legislation to implement the Kigali Amendment to the 1987 Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. This is to strengthen regulation of the production and consumption of hydrofluorocarbons or HFCs with a high global warming potential. At the two meetings held with the administration, members of the BC shared many ideas. Several of these were adopted by the administration to achieve greater success in implementing the legislation and to give the trade and the public a better idea of the legislation. Members stressed Hong Kong's obligation to fulfill this international protocol by phasing down the consumption of scheduled HFCs by 85% from the baseline by 2036. To achieve this goal, the administration proposed 3 control strategies that covered import, supply, and recovery in a stepwise approach to reduce the production and consumption of scheduled HFCs. The Kigali Amendment set out different phase-down timetables on scheduled HFCs for parties that were developing economies, such as the mainland, and developed economies, such as Hong Kong. Members were concerned about the implications of this difference for Hong Kong's global trade and alignment with the mainland. The administration explained that all parties had acted on their commitment to reducing the production, import, or use of products and equipment involving such HFCs. Hong Kong and the rest of the global economy all followed this international protocol. This was not expected to have an adverse effect on our economy. The bill also referred to several refrigerants, including hazardous refrigerants, specified refrigerants, and controlled refrigerants. Members pointed out that neither the trade nor the public was familiar with these terms. In response, the administration pledged to enhance publicity, step up education, prepare a code of practice, and lay down guidelines upon the bill's passage to clarify the meaning of these terms. On the import quota, members wondered how this measure could help to phase down scheduled HFCs. The administration explained that the prevailing stepwise decreasing quota system would be adopted to meet the goal under the Kigali Amendment. The quota for an importer would be allocated based on their past usage and become freely transferable on the market. This setup would strike a balance between fair competition and flexibility. Greater efforts would be made to engage with the trade and promote the new arrangement in the future. The administration also took on board members' suggestion of setting out in the future code of practice or guidelines the registration criteria for importers and exporters of scheduled substances to avoid difficulties or disputes during enforcement of the future ordinance. On penalties, members argued for consistent and effective penalties that had a deterrent effect. The administration stated that the growing attention from the international community to protection of the ozone layer and global warming warranted a review of the penalties to demonstrate the SAR government's resolve to fulfill this international agreement on safeguarding the planet. The proposed penalties took into account other local legislation on environmental protection. They were proportional to the offenses and had a deterrent effect. Members were also concerned about the spate of accidents during technical works and stressed that technicians must complete training and obtain certification before handling scheduled substances. The administration said that some training programs would be launched in the second quarter this year, while others would come on stream in due course to meet the trade's needs. The administration also pledged to ensure enough training bodies would offer such courses during the transition. After considering members' views, the administration decided to move an amendment to the bill by removing references to continuing offense to avoid unduly penalizing people who fail to retrieve past records due to genuine difficulties. Madam Deputy, the BC supports the bill and has no objection to the amendment to be moved by the administration in a moment. Now, my thoughts on this bill. I doubt many people know what HFCs are, but we have come across such substances in our everyday life. They are frequently used as refrigerants in AC and fridges. They are also used as fire suppressants. But then HFCs have a high global warming potential, or GWP. That means they speed up global warming, and that will lead to more extreme weather. That's why the Kigali Amendment was signed by many states. That meant we will have to phase down the production and consumption of HFCs. Hong Kong has to follow our country's footsteps in this regard, meaning we have to regulate the substance. Now, what we are doing here is that we are amending our local legislation, the Ozone Layer Protection Ordinance, and its subsidiary legislation to phase down HFCs with a high GWP, and that means covering products and equipment using such HFCs to meet the requirements under the Kigali Amendment. I support the amendment to strengthen regulation of the use of such HFCs to mitigate the impact on global warming. The administration proposed 3 control strategies controlling the consumption and production. So starting from the end of this year, we will put in place a licensing and quota system, and also we will ban the local manufacturing. By the middle of next year, we will take a step-by-step approach to regulating the import and supply of products and equipment using high GWP HFCs, and then later we will also mandate the recovery of refrigerants and fire suppressants. We will also lay down handling guidelines. On the first control strategy, meaning the licensing and quota system on the import and export of scheduled HFCs, my concern is how this quota system can help us phase down the import over time. Now, we were told by the administration the ratio will be 7:3. There are normal quota spots and free quota places. Now, for the normal quota, we look at the usage of the importers, and then we allocate to them accordingly. As for the free quota, they will go to the new importers or importers who have exceeded their normal quota. I welcome the free quota and also allowing the quota to be freely transferable. That will give flexibility to importers, and that also means flexibility for the market as a whole, and with that, competitiveness. Now, on this stepwise approach, this decreasing quota system, this will also meet the Kigali Amendment's goal. Now, on the registration of importers and exporters of such HFCs, now we're looking at Clause 5(1)(a). Now, for exporters and importers of substances under Schedule 1, this amends the original Section 5(1)(a), meaning existing exporters and importers of HFCs already qualify under the new scheme, but then the phrase engaging in or carrying out has a broad meaning. They were involved in this trade so many years ago, and they can still qualify. So I think there should be clear guidelines on what we mean so that we avoid disputes over this particular word was. And the Bureau adopted my idea in their amendment. In 2023, the trade was consulted on this proposal. And there was an idea about the transitional producer responsibility scheme for refrigerants so that people don't just dump outdated models in Hong Kong. But in this amendment exercise, no mention of this scheme was made. So during the BC's meetings, I put this question: if we decide not to take forward the scheme, how can we avoid the dumping of outdated appliances? The government told us there was no agreement in the trade. And Control Strategy 3, which is on recovery and reuse, the concept has been incorporated into Control Strategy 3, and hence there's no need for the producer responsibility scheme. But I urge the government to revisit this. Now, on the maximum penalties, under the ozone layer protection controlled refrigerants regulation, I support stiffening this penalty. The penalty should be commensurate with the offense so that we can achieve a deterrent effect. I also want to thank all members of the BC for taking part in the work and the assistance given by the Secretariat and the legal advisor. I also thank the administration for their support so that the BC could complete the scrutiny of the bill. I so submit I support the bill and the amendment. Thank you, Madam Deputy.
Mr. Kenneth Lau. Mr. Edward Lau. Thank you, Deputy President. I support the Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024 in light of the trend of global warming. Hong Kong, as an international city, should also fulfill its obligations to protect the environment. We should also update our environmental protection policies locally to tackle the issue of global challenge. Now, in relation to the amendment, which will delete the continuing offense, I think that this is justified. It strikes a balance between practicality and the rigorous enforcement regime. Now, the original bill provides that there will be a continuing offense for failing to keep records of refrigeration equipment. Well, for SMEs operating garages or car repair, they may have some resource limitations. Because of the negligence of a staff member, this could lead to a continuing offense, and that the operator may be penalized. This will be too much a deterrence to the trade. And it's also a departure from the original legislative intent. By deleting continuing offense, the administration could still mete out penalties for the offense itself, and we will also step up its efforts in regulating the matter. I believe that this will provide flexibility when it comes to enforcement, and it will also encourage the trade in joining hands with the government in protecting the ozone. As I understand, by the fourth quarter of this year, the new strategy will be adopted, and that the relevant stakeholders responsible for repairing or manufacturing the refrigeration equipment and refrigerants will need to adopt no GWP alternatives. However, the government has not yet come up with the technical guidelines, and will there be any financial subsidy or technical support on the part of the government to make sure that the operators will be able to meet the new technical requirements? The government should also consider working with local research institutions and universities in developing new refrigeration technologies, so that with professional training and support, we can help the trade meet the new requirements. The government also plans to introduce Control Strategy 3, that is to mandate the recovery of refrigerants and fire suppressants. At the moment, there is a lack of guidelines. There should be clarity for the trade to better understand the government's policy. So I would advise the government to publish the relevant roadmap for recovery of or recycling of refrigerants, and there should be clear targets. The government should also proactively reach out to the trade to make sure that they understand the details of the implementation, so as to give effect to the new ordinance. At the moment, the law does not provide a clear delineation of responsibility. For example, as to the life cycle of refrigeration equipment, should the importer, manufacturer, or the retailer be responsible? And if there is a leakage of the HFCs concerned in the process of repair, who should be responsible? At the moment, the general rule in the global community is that there is a producer responsibility scheme, and that the manufacturer or the importer concerned should be responsible for the recovery of refrigerants. However, this bill doesn't spell out who ultimately should be responsible. I hope that in the future there will be greater clarity on this matter to ensure smooth implementation of the policy. Now, on the whole, I do support the Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024. I believe that this will help better protect the environment in Hong Kong, and it's a way forward. It can also help Hong Kong fulfill our international obligations on the front of environmental protection. Mr. Lam Chen Sing, thank you, Deputy President. In 2021, our country ratified or accepted the Kigali Amendment in June, and it came to effect in September of the same year to gradually phase down the production and consumption of HFCs. And this is a joint global effort to tackle the climate change and to slow down global warming. Now, according to the amendment, by 2018 in Hong Kong, the consumption or production of HFC will also need to be phased down by 40%, so that ultimately by 2036, the ultimate target could be reached, that is phasing down by 85%. The bill provides a legislative backing for the phase down arrangement. Now, the government has adopted a multi-pronged approach in regulating the use of HFCs, and the government also consulted the trade, including practitioners relating to air conditioners who will be affected by the bill. They, in general, support the bill, and they've expressed a number of concerns. For example, the bill regulates import and export of HFC as well as mandating the recovery of refrigerants. This is the way out. But according to the sector, in fact, at the moment, there is a very low percentage of usage of or recovery of refrigerants in air conditioners. Basically, there hasn't been any progress. The government should promulgate guidelines in the future to promote recovery of refrigerants. The bill also regulates the import and export of scheduled HFCs. There should be sufficient time for the trade to clear the inventory, and there are sufficient alternative low GWP or mature low GWP alternatives available in the market. Older ACs and refrigerators will be phased out. Nowadays, there are also newer models that meet the up-to-date requirements. Now, we should also note the development trend of research in the new low GWP refrigerants and market availability, so that we can meet the target baseline or target. Now, I'm also concerned about occupational safety, especially after the bill takes effect, because some low GWP refrigerants are highly toxic, and they are also they operate in a high pressure environment, and we every now and then we hear about accidents involving ACs getting on fire or explosion, industrial accidents. This is mostly due to leakage of the refrigerant pipes, and as a result, these technicians handling scheduled substances should undergo professional training. Now, the bill has provided a very clear direction, but I think that guidelines should be promulgated to make sure that when handling low GWP substances and controlled substances, the recovery and handling should be carried out in a safe manner. The relevant technicians should also get a training certificate before they're allowed to carry out their work. Now, many training institutions will be operating these courses. I hope that the administration will continue to monitor the situation, and if necessary, the administration should discuss with the training institutions to adjust the number of training places to ensure that there will be sufficient supply of manpower to meet the needs. For example, for technicians sitting in an exam for the first time, should they fail, they should be allowed to retake the exam as quickly as possible, so as not to affect the operation of the AC trade because of lack of manpower. That should also be a continuous professional development requirement to make sure that technicians are imparted, will be equipped with up-to-date knowledge. Finally, on safety training, it is hoped that the administration will provide more financial subsidies. If there is a need to revamp the curricula, there will be no need to amend the law, but still, it is hoped that the administration will consult the sector. In fact, last year, the Provisional Refrigerant Technical Advisory Committee was set up, and after passage of the bill, this advisory committee will become a formal body, and that the trade will be consulted. Should there be any need to amend the law in the future, the trade should be consulted again. I support the bill.
Mr. Kwok Wai-keung. Thank you, Madam Deputy. I support the Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024. This shows Hong Kong, as a responsible member of the global community, is determined to fulfill its obligations. In 2016, the Kigali Amendment was endorsed, and now we are giving effect to this amendment. And we are regulating HFCs, hydrochlorocarbons. These substances do not directly hurt our ozone, but they are a very potent substance that can lead to global warming, meaning they are a substance with a high GWP. With global adoption of the Kigali Amendment, we can reduce global warming by 0.5 degree Celsius by 2100, and this will be a profound step for giving effect to the Paris Agreement. Hong Kong has a per capita carbon emission of 4.5 tons, so there is no reason we should fall behind in terms of this commitment. Now, I have some thoughts on occupational safety and the training of practitioners. 1. Stepping up training. Let's update the occupational safety standards, and also we need public resources to go hand in hand. When we were deliberating on the clauses, the department in charge told us that the refrigerant and the fire suppressant were used in a confined or enclosed space, and the exposure of practitioners to these substances would be brief. Now we're proposing import restrictions. We're also encouraging recovery, and the quota will be freely transferable on the market. So that means more frequent transfers down the road. The new HFCs are more toxic and flammable than those from the past, so let's be vigilant. And we should step up training of practitioners. New refrigerants can help reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. But the new HFCs are distinct from the old ones. Again, the new HFCs are more flammable. The safety risks are real. Now, for people who work in AC and refrigerants, they are trained in the older generation of HFCs. And that means these practitioners may not be very familiar with the newer HFCs. That warrants a tiered training and certification system. Knowledge of the new HFCs should be part of the training on offer. And there should be manuals and emergency response guidelines on different kinds of refrigerants so that practitioners are up to speed on the new requirements. And there should be technical support and guidelines so that the trade is also kept up to date. Now, my second point is about updating our occupational safety standards. The bill makes reference to safe handling of alternative refrigerants. But for the government, planning is needed. Now, for flammable refrigerants, there should be contingency plans, ventilation requirements, personal protective equipment when there's a leakage. And for new eco-friendly refrigerants, the government should continuously update and devise safety protocol. My third point is resources. Now, with the new ordinance, there will be more enforcement because there will be more monitoring of import testing, policing of non-compliance cases and inspections. The information should be made public, say in terms of manpower deployment and resource commitment. The information should be made public. That will give the trade a clearer picture on the details, and that will also inspire public confidence in the enforcement of the future ordinance. The Montreal Protocol works in terms of protecting the environment across the globe. The protocol was signed in 1987. Some rectifications, some repairs are going on with our ozone layer. An earlier study showed at this rate, the hole and the ozone layer above the Antarctica can be restored to the 1986 level by the year 2066. So that would mean we have to do our part to get there. Hong Kong is a leading city. We should be a role model in sustainable development. The Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024 means we are fulfilling our international obligation. We're also doing this to better protect our next generation. With good support from the government and listening to the trade and good implementation, this bill will mean that Hong Kong will be a role model for the Bay Area. I so submit. Thank you. Mr. Port Tony Te. Thank you, Madam Deputy. Now we had typhoons Hato and other typhoons. We got Typhoon Hato, Typhoon Mangkhut, and then we had this once in a century rainstorm. We should be alive to the impact of global warming. And we shouldn't be like Donald Trump, who said all that is hoax. The hazards are real because property can be damaged and lives are at stake because of extreme weather. People everywhere have the duty to take positive steps to cope with climate change. We have to keep people safe. We're resuming the second reading debate on the Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024. The global community is taking steps to mitigate the effects of global warming. So they endorsed the Kigali Amendment. That amendment requires parties to do their best to phase down 18 HFCs with a high global warming potential. For the most popular kind of greenhouse gas carbon dioxide, we know these HFCs can do way more damage, 1,000 times more potent than carbon dioxide. HFCs are usually used as refrigerants in your fridges, in your AC, and in fire extinguishers. So those are essential items in everyday life. With advance in science, we now have less harmful alternatives. But we cannot get rid of all the harmful HFCs overnight. We cannot expect people to ditch the older product right away. This bill seeks to lay down a legal framework for dealing with these substances so that the government can take a stepwise approach to regulating the production, import, export, and consumption of such substances. The end goal is to get rid of those substances. Members from the G19 group support the principles of this bill. In October 2016, the Kigali Amendment was passed, and then the Central People's Government also ratified the amendment in 2021. The goal is to phase down the scheduled substances by 85% from the baseline by 2036. Our country is a major maker of fridges, AC, and fire extinguishers, so that's a significant commitment from our country. During the BC's deliberations, I put a question to the government why we waited more than 3 years after the mainland to give effect to the Kigali Amendment. The administration told us the consultation and amendment was affected by COVID. The Kigali Amendment also laid down different timetables for developing economies and developed economies. So we are in a different situation from the mainland. It turns out that the US adopted the Kigali Amendment in principle only in September 2022, 1 year later than what our country did. And in the US, there was an extra condition. The US was trying to remove our country from the list of developing countries, so that's another attempt to politicize an environmental problem. After Donald Trump took office, the US also ditched its many eco-protection commitments, and the US is simply going backward in its green efforts. So for the US, their work on the Kigali Amendment has basically came to a standstill, and that's bad for the planet. Over here, we do not make any fire suppressants or fire refrigerants, so our work focuses on import, export, recovery, and elimination. Fridges and fire extinguishers use these substances, and people worry whether our regulation will lead to a sharp reduction in the supply of those goods and whether prices will shoot up. The administration told us that with the new rules in place in different places, alternatives at similar price levels are already on stream. That means this amendment will have a limited impact on practitioners and consumers in general. For products such as the medical products and products for scientific purposes where you cannot find alternatives, those products can enjoy an exemption under the bill. Now, on workers in the AC industries, people who work with refrigerants, record keeping of refrigerants, and also mandatory recovery, the government said that would be covered by subsidiary legislation at the next stage. I hope the government will learn from the experience for this bill, meaning in the future, let's start the consultation sooner so that industry practitioners can get used with the new rules, and let's also guard against over-regulation. And we have to be mindful that the fees in repairing AC will not shoot up. And we also have to guard against under-regulation, which will harm the environment. The Secretary will move committee stage amendments. Basically, there's just one point: removing the reference to continuing offense. That was a point I raised during the BC's deliberations. Simply put, that provision has to do with contractors. They have to maintain the records on the refrigerants. Failure to do that is an offense and is liable to an imprisonment for 6 months and a fine of $200,000. There's an ambiguity in the bill. When someone is found guilty of failing to maintain records, this person will be hard-pressed to retrieve the records, and that will mean a continuing offense. That's what I raised. I'm glad to see that the administration adopted my proposal. So I support the government's amendment. Madam Deputy, I so submit. I support this bill myself, and on behalf of G19, I also support the bill's second and third reading.
Mr. Peter Shiu. Thank you, Madam Deputy. The Liberal Party supports the Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024. As my colleague said just now, the bill seeks to protect the environment and the ozone. That's the point of today's bill. So naturally, we will support it. As I always said, legislative amendments are always a double-edged sword. Now, this bill sounds very complicated with a lot of jargons. Simply put, your refrigerators and your air conditioners will be affected. The refrigerants are the controlled HFCs. I represent the trade, but I am not a Bills Committee member. Because before the bill was introduced, the industry has had very close communication with the Environmental Protection Department. I thank the EEB and the EPD for consulting the trade in depth before the bill, and whether the bill would affect the supply of products in the market and whether the inventory can be sold before the law takes effect. The EPD has been very receptive to the trade's views. A timetable has been agreed upon and the trade was happy about it. So of course I would support the bill. So I speak in support of the bill and I thank the government, especially the EPD. I hope other departments will also learn from the EPD and the EEB to consult the trade as early as possible before a bill is introduced. Thank you. Mr. Tang Fei. Madam Deputy President, I speak in support of the Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024. The bill seeks to implement the Kigali Amendment of the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. We need to amend our ozone layer protection ordinance to implement the requirements in the Kigali Agreement amendments in Hong Kong. In 2016 October, the Kigali Amendment was amended further. That's the Kigali Amendment. That is to control or prohibit the consumption or manufacture of hydrofluorocarbons or hydrofluorocarbons with high global warming potential. Now, the objective of that amendment, Kigali Amendment, is to phase down the production and consumption of the 18 high global warming potential HFCs. Deputy President, the amendment bill has two important purposes. First, from the perspective of the Hong Kong SAR, at present, the Kigali Amendment does not apply to Hong Kong. We need to provide a legal basis for implementing the Kigali Amendment in Hong Kong. We need to internalize the requirements under the Kigali Amendment locally, and then we can seek the ratification from the Central People's Government for the implementation of Kigali Amendments in Hong Kong. This is very proactive. Now, it seems the timetable has been deferred. I mean, there have been many amendments to the Montreal Protocol, but I think it is good that the Hong Kong SAR government take the initiative to implement the amendment first before the international organization has mandated us to do so. Second, it has a significant educational purpose. Now, as mentioned by Mr. Chen Siu-hung, after the passage of the bill, we need to step up education on what HFCs are. These are very difficult jargons. However, for secondary students and teachers, global warming gases are not strange to them. So it will have a substantial meaning in our syllabus. Now, to protect the ozone layers from HFCs and CFCs, this brought me back to my experience when I took the public examination in my days. These were part of the syllabus. Now, after several decades, the concepts of global warming still exist in geography, physics, chemistry, and even citizenship and social development in senior secondary high school syllabus, and also in civic education or value education. This syllabus also comprises the concepts of environmental protection and ozone layer protection. However, in reality, we don't have a comprehensive package of law to control and prohibit the manufacturing of products and equipment using these HFCs. So that's why the concept only existed in textbook. Teachers were hard-pressed to answer students' questions. Students would wonder, since these HFCs are so harmful to the ozone layer, and they exist in hairspray and other refrigerants, why are they still sold in the market? The teachers would be hard-pressed to answer these questions. So this time, we are finally following the global trend and implement the latest requirements. And also, it will give substantial contents or significance to our environmental protection syllabus, so that awareness of environmental protection can be enhanced among the younger generation. Thank you. Mr. Martin Liao.
Deputy President, as we're discussing the Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024, I'd like to explain that the objective is to phase down the production and consumption of hydrofluorocarbons or HFCs. HFCs are basically refrigerants used in refrigeration equipment and fire suppressants. Some solvents, hairsprays, polyfoam materials also use HFCs. In the 1980s, the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer was promulgated to gradually phase down the use of ozone layer depleting substances. But in recent years, HFC, which already replaced the two depleting substances before, have been found by the academia to be having high global warming potential, and that is it could be as high as 14,018 times of carbon dioxide. The warming effect of 1 year of production of HFC could be the same as 300 power generating units. And that is why it significantly aggravates global warming and causes serious problems such as extreme weather. It also causes serious risks to the agriculture and fisheries sector. And as such, in 2016, the Kigali Amendment was passed to amend the Montreal Protocol in order to phase down the production and consumption of 18 HFCs with high global warming potential. The target is to reduce the consumption of HFCs by 85% by 2036 and to reduce global warming by 0.5 degrees. Our country accepted the Kigali Amendment in June 2021, and as such, we must also amend local legislation to implement the protocol and the amendment to phase down the use of HFCs to fulfill our international obligations. Now, with the administration has proposed 3 control strategies. That is implementing a licensing and quota system on the import-export of scheduled HFCs and prohibit local manufacture, regulate the import and supply of products and equipment using high GWP HFCs, and mandate the recovery of refrigerants and fire suppressants and formulate handling guidelines. Now, Hong Kong does not manufacture HFCs, so this bill does not affect any manufacturer in Hong Kong. As for the quota system and the licensing system to be introduced, we do not have a lot of import or export activities of scheduled HFCs in Hong Kong, so a significant impact on the trade is not envisaged. The next strategy is to regulate the import and supply of products and equipment using high GWP HFCs. In fact, we have low GWP alternatives available in the market. These are substitutes usually used in household air conditionings or motor vehicle air conditioners. Of course, I understand for ultra-low temperature refrigeration system and labs, they still use HFCs for research purposes, and there are no substitutes. Exemption will be provided by the administration, and I welcome that. As for mandatory recovery of refrigerants and fire suppressants, now VPARC has a daily handling capacity of 30,000 or yearly capacity of 30,000 tons to handle the recovery of refrigerators, clothes dryers, dehumidifiers, etc. Last year, it handled over 20,000 tons of refrigerants, and upon passage of the bill, the capacity may be reached. The government should consider introducing this proposal in phases, and we should also encourage recycling to avoid more waste being generated. Deputy President, global warming is a major problem. It is also the cause of extreme weather in many places. Ozone layer depletion does not only happen in one place. We should all chip in to reduce the use of refrigerants so as to alleviate the problem. I support the bill.
Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I now call upon the Secretary for Environment and Ecology to reply. Then the debate will come to a close. Secretary, please. Deputy President, I give my heartfelt thanks to the Chairman of the Bills Committee, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, and the members of the Bills Committee for scrutinizing the bill, that is the Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024, in an effective manner, so that we can resume the bill's second reading debate today. I also thank all the invaluable views put forward by members just now. Since 1988, through the Ozone Layer Protection Ordinance, Hong Kong has been implementing the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. Hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, are a kind of global warming gases which contribute to climate change. There is an international consensus to prohibit or control the consumption or manufacture of HFCs. Based on that international consensus, the Kigali Amendment was ratified in October 2016 to include 18 HFCs into the regulatory scope of the Montreal Protocol. Phase-down targets and timetable were set. The target of this bill is to implement the Kigali Amendment and to reach the ultimate target of phasing down the consumption of the 18 HFCs in 2036 by 85% from the baseline level. The bill will implement the requirements of the Kigali Amendment and also provide a legal basis for an orderly phase down. Generally speaking, the Bills Committee's members supported the targets of the bill and agree that the legislative amendment work should be completed as soon as possible to implement the Kigali Amendment. Constructive proposed suggestions were put forward by members. Having carefully considered these suggestions, we will move amendments to some provisions of the bill. I will explain those in details at the committee stage. In terms of legislative timetable, the Kigali Amendment has taken effect in September 2021 in the mainland. Some members ask, why are we only seeking an amendment this year? First of all, the Kigali Amendment does not apply to Hong Kong at present. That point has been made clear by the Central People's Government when it ratified the Kigali Amendments in 2021. Discussion about implementing the Kigali Amendments has started in 2019. However, the subsequent consultation process and legislative work were delayed by the coronavirus pandemic. But that will not affect the implementation of the Kigali Amendments in Hong Kong by way of this bill to achieve the ultimate phase-down targets by 2036. Also, some members were concerned that the proposed prohibition on manufacturing and supply on products and equipment would affect our imports and exports as well as re-export trade. They are also concerned that after the implementation of the prohibition, the local market may have to introduce pricier alternatives. I stress here that the Kigali Amendment has been widely accepted globally, with 163 signatories. Phasing out controlled HFCs and the relevant equipment and products is the global trend. To align with this global trend, global manufacturers, including those in the mainland, have shifted their production to more low GWP alternatives. With the technology of the alternatives becoming more sophisticated, the prices will become stable. The prohibition will not cause adverse impacts on our import, export, and re-export trade. The proposals in the bill have been formulated after extensive consultation and careful consideration of stakeholders' views. The trade in general supported the proposal in the bill. Subject to the third reading of the bill by the LegCo, the bill will prohibit manufacturing of the 18 controlled HFCs regulated by the bill in the fourth quarter this year. There will also be a licensing and quota system on the import and exports of scheduled HFCs. For the remaining two strategies involving product regulations, mandatory recovery, and handling guidelines, we will consult the trade further and submit a proposal to LegCo next year under the positive vetting procedures. For the way forward, we will continue to step up publicity and education to assist the trade in complying with the new requirements. We will continue to keep in touch with the trade to finalize the specific details on product regulation and mandatory recovery. I implore members to support the passage of the bill to implement the Kigali amendments. I so submit.
I now put the question to you that the Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024 be read the second time. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. Ozone Layer Protection Amendment Bill 2024. This council now becomes the